Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record testimony from the Human Rights Campaign in support of this hearing.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bromley, let me ask you this question. In March of 2015, I sent a bipartisan letter to USAID with Chairman Emeritus Ross Layton in, urging targeted funding to protect the human rights of LGBT individuals in the Northern Triangle countries of Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador. And as you know, violence against the LGBT community in these countries has reached dangerous levels. I was particularly disturbed by the recent murder of LGBT activist Renee Martinez in Honduras. The United States is providing $750 million in new assistance to Central America this year and hopefully in subsequent years. How can this funding be used to help the LGBT community in Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala? How specifically can USAID and the State Department better assist the LGBT population in Central America? And I know Chairman Ross Layton joins me in concern of all these issues.
Thank you, Mr. Engel, and thank you, Mr. Ross Layton, for your support on that initiative. As you mentioned, the levels of violence in Central America are dangerously high. The average life expectancy of a transgender woman in Central America is estimated to be 35 years of age, and probably lower in Honduras and some other countries. So this is a real epidemic of violence, and support is important. There have been some steps with U.S. government support, including the creation of a special victims unit in Honduras to help investigate LGBT cases as well as other priority human rights cases, and new hate crimes training covering LGBT hate crimes for police officers from that region in our International Law Enforcement Academy in San Salvador. But to date, we haven't really seen the fruits of these investments. I think the key is that we really need to double down on our investment in that area to bring civil society into the process so that they're working with the ILEA, that they're working with the Special Victims Unit to really ensure that there's coordinated action on civil society's side as well as the government side to respond to these abuses. And ultimately, at the political level, from your seat here in Congress and from our embassies in those countries, we need to ensure that the political will is there. And I think we've seen moments of political will, but at times that political will has stumbled. So I think more of the same, but it's an urgent request.
Thank you. Let me ask you this. You've mentioned in your testimony the horrific abuses inflicted by ISIS on gay men, people being thrown off buildings, stoned to death, and all videotaped to serve as a warning to others. LGBT individuals are sometimes forced to flee for their lives, and I understand that it's difficult to determine how many refugees of LGBT there are, since LGBT people often do not self-identify. They fear violence and retaliation from their community or even from other refugees. So it seems to me that LGBT refugees from different parts of the world suffer unique vulnerabilities and face difficult circumstances. Can you tell us more about that, the continued challenges they face while fleeing or in a refugee camp or even when already resettled in another country?
Thank you, Mr. Engel. Absolutely. As I mentioned, LGBT refugees are probably some of the most vulnerable individuals on the planet. That even when they are forced to flee their own country, which is a decision that no individual takes lightly, they find themselves in a refugee community, often in a country that is equally hostile to LGBT individuals, in a refugee community that doesn't understand their own situation or their claim for protection on the basis of their sexual orientation, gender identity, and they're exposed to extreme levels of violence and persecution in camp settings in particular. We are seeing large concentrations of LGBT refugees, particularly in cities in Turkey, where they're also very vulnerable and often forced to the margins of society. Fortunately, UNHCR and the US government are looking at opportunities to identify those LGBT refugees. As you noted, the first challenge is convincing them that it's safe to come out, to tell authorities, to tell UNHCR who they are and why they need protection. Once they are identified, there are opportunities to offer additional protection, to offer refugee processing in a way that is both sensitive and efficient to try to get them out of danger as quickly as possible. But those steps need additional support. We really need to continue to push UNHCR, which is on the front lines here, and as the largest investor in UNHCR, I think we can make sure that they make a difference.
And let me ask you one final question. The State Department Global Equality Fund supports courageous frontline human rights defenders, and not enough can be said of their bravery to fight against the hate and the violence, the vitriol. I think of the dauntless Frank Mugisha in Uganda, whose colleague was brutally murdered. He continues to stand up for those who want dignity in their lives, or the countless others who work under the threat of violence, detention, and beatings. What more can the U.S. government do to support these frontline human rights defenders?
Thank you. I do think the Global Equality Fund is a remarkable fund and one that we've really been able to use to great advantage. It's co-funded by 13 other governments, so we're not in this alone. We are pooling the resources, and the U.S. is using our broad reach through our embassies to really lead that fund and help identify those activists on the front line who are most in need of support. But I think we need to really support that fund. We can grow it with more governments. I believe there are a couple more that are going to be coming into the fund. But that takes diplomatic engagement, and it takes U.S. leadership to show that we will continue to be a leader in that fund and in this struggle to support some of these truly brave human rights defenders who are on the front lines in places like Uganda and elsewhere, where it's really difficult to be standing up for fundamental freedoms and for pluralistic societies.
Thank you, and I want to thank all the witnesses. Thank you.
Randy Weber.